let's set up tongue controls. So what we'll do is work with another rectangular spline. Let's go ahead and grab that. We'll make it editable, and we'll need to scale it down. So we'll bring the size down quite a bit. And just to give it more of a rectangular form, I'm going to go ahead and bring it down in the y-axis a bit more. And now we can go ahead and axis snap over to tongue A. I use the O key to zoom on in, and you can see that it's snapped to the wrong joint, so we'll just go ahead and bring it down. There we go. And then we could go back to point mode just to fix the size. Okay, so that's pretty good. That should be easy enough to select. If anything, we might bring it up a bit more on the y-axis. Let's rename this to anim tongue A01. We'll have it stored in our controls layer. And we'll also recolor it. So we use red. Alright, great. So the next step then is to go ahead and clone this for our other joint objects. And then we can go ahead and axis snap to each. So I'll use Control V to create another copy and do that one more time. Now, as far as how we will control each joint, we'll use a PSR constraint. That way we have full control over the transforms of each joint. And that will ultimately give us a very flexible rig. Before we get to that, let's go in and rename these objects. And then we'll make sure that their orientation matches with each joint so that there's no shifting when we apply the constraint. Alright, so it's just a matter of going in. I might go to wireframe mode with NG. Just a matter of selecting the control followed by the joint object. And then we can go ahead and use a rotation constraint to match the orientation. Then we no longer need the constraint object, so we can go ahead and delete that tag. And we'll do that for the next joint. So select the control, select the joint, and rotation constraint. I might actually tear this menu off since we'll use it a few more times. There we go. There's the tag. Let's go ahead and remove it. Do that a few more times and we'll be good. Great. And just one more. Okay. So, next we're ready to parent these objects in an FK hierarchy. So D will be parented to C. I'll actually undo just to make sure only D is selected. There we go. And C to B, B to A. Great. Alright, let's go ahead and also make sure that this hierarchy is going to be parented underneath the lower jaw control. Now first we'll go ahead and create a group and have that stored. That way if we need to add any extra functionality to the tongue rig overall, we can add that to the group object. Alright, with the tongue A selected, I'm going to go ahead and use Alt-G to create our group. With the null selected now, let's go ahead and set its display to none. Then we'll go ahead and rename this. So that's going to be NDRV anim tongue 01. Alright, again, we want this parented underneath the lower jaw. So here's that control object. Let's go ahead and drag it down. Alright, great. We can go ahead and set up our constraints. Then we can go ahead and freeze our objects down. So now, let's go back to our constraint menu. Let's over to the side. We'll want to grab the joint first, then the control, and use a PSR constraint. We may need to fix our priority. Right now, the JAWS priority is expression 2. So chances are we'll need to use expression 3. Alright, so I'll go ahead and create one more PSR constraint. And then we could test this out. So as we grab only the control, as we start to move this around, undo back. Alright, things seem to look well. What happens if we grab the jaw? You can see we're getting a bit of some jumping behavior, a bit of hoppiness in the tongue when we undo back. Doesn't undo back perfectly, and that's simply because of our constraint tags, their priority. So let's go ahead and take care of that. We can go ahead and select one of our tongue joints. If we need to, we could use scroll to first active, but here are all of those tags. So watch, if we were to just go in and set our level to 3, because remember, the lower jaw right now is set to 2. So let's go ahead and take care of the other tags. It's going to be 3, 3, and just one more. Alright, so now, if we were to go back to our lower jaw control and start to move this, you can see that we're not getting any of that strange behavior anymore when we undo back. Everything works just fine. We don't want to forget to freeze our tongue controls, so let's go ahead and take care of that, and that will be it. So I'll grab each of them and freeze. Beautiful. Alright, so by the end, what we're left with is, again, a very flexible tongue rig. Great stuff. Okay, I'll use reset PSR to bring this back. We could also disable axis snapping. So now that our tongue is finished, what is left to do? Well, now we are ready to work on our morph targets. This is basically our last task before we start to clean up our rig using protection tags to lock down any axes that should not move, and also setting up keyframe selections and a selection object for our controls, things like that. So we'll get to that when it's time, but right now what I'm going to go ahead and do is just bring back the face. Here it is. Okay, great. And in the following lesson, we're going to go ahead and start to work on our pose morphs.